Violinist Ray Chen has a brand new album out from Decca Records, his first, in fact, from that record label. And it has a number of classics on it, some well-known arrangements for violin and piano, also some brand new arrangements for this particular CD. Ray Chen joins us to talk about it. The name of Ray's new album is The Golden Age, and while that title may conjure up images of some of the great violinists of the past, I get the idea that that title means a little bit more to you in regards to this music and yourself as a musician. Can you talk about the golden age for you a little bit?
Oh, well, that's very insightful of you, Brad. Yeah, actually, that is the second meaning behind the album title, besides the, tipping of the hat towards that old school era, which is that, yeah, I'm 29 now. I've been on the circuit, shall we say, for a little bit of a while, and it's starting to appear to me that I'm starting to find myself and feel more settled. I think as I perform more and just gain more experience in general, and I feel like it's also been 4 years since my last album release, and yeah, I feel like I'm on a new chapter on a different level. I'm proud. There have been many highlights in my career, but I think the biggest highlight, the one I'm most proud of, is this continuous improvement as a violinist and as a musician. So, when I felt ready, I was ready, I did this album, and I hope that people out there will enjoy listening and hear a difference, which I really think is there.
Yeah. Well, there's some wonderful music on here, and I love the way that you pay tribute to these great violinists like, Fritz Kreisler and what have you, with using their arrangements of pieces, but you also have new arrangements.
That's right. Of
some works that you do with your string quartet. Let's talk about the new stuff first, then we can go back and talk about some of the other tribute works.
That's right. Well, the new stuff that we've arranged, I did it together with the cellist in my string quartet. So our string quartet's name is Made in Berlin, because we're for guys that, we met in Berlin. None of us are actually German, but we were made in Berlin. So it was actually a temporary name, because we couldn't think of a quartet name, and it just kind of stuck. So yeah. That's our name now, and they're really great guys. One of them, the other violinist, Noah Bendix-Bogli, actually knew since for almost 10 years now. We were in the Queen Elizabeth together back in 2009, and we kind of went on different paths. He went and became a concertmaster of Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, and he was there for a couple of years, and then they kind of they stole him away to Berlin to become the concertmaster in Berlin Phil. So that's his story, and we kind of, around the time that he was moving there, I kind of was like, well, I'm thinking about moving there too. What do you think about starting a group? And he agreed. So we got some of the other players in the orchestra to join us. So the cellist, though, I want to talk a little bit about him, Stefan Kunz, in our group. He's really the mastermind behind the arrangements. I mean, I do a little bit of music arrangements myself, oftentimes for violin and piano, but for string quartet, it's a little more complicated. You have to be good about handing which melodies to which instrument, and with these new arrangements that he and I did, I mean, it's really something. I felt like, wow, I have a lot to learn from that guy. And so, actually, two of the 3 tracks, we did 3 arrangements. One is the very traditional Debussy's Clair de Lune. And that one is kind of something that, was more of a direct approach. We didn't really change too much in the music. The second one that we did was based on the Gymnopédie by Satie. So that one that was actually one of our first projects together as a group that we did that, and people loved it. We put it on YouTube, and that was kind of like how our first established kind of single as a group. And and then the third track is an Australian ballad. So it's kind of an acknowledgement to Australia and where I grew up, called Waltzing Matilda. And so we really went to town on that one. We threw everything and the kitchen sink into that track. We would put in some American bluegrass, rhythms in there. We put in, very, also even some monastic, Gregorian chant in there, along with it. I mean, it's got everything. I really like that track.
I thought I was hearing things until I went back and looked at the program notes, because I heard that Dies Irae theme, that dee 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 dee, and that's in there too.
Yeah, that is. So that basically, it's interesting that you brought that up. That is something that I wanted in there, because the story behind Waltzing Matilda, it's about this Australian gypsy guy who's just a wanderer, and then he comes across a herd of sheep. He decides to steal one. But then he's alerted. They've alerted him to the cops, and they're after him. And there's this chase, but instead of being caught, which I think he would have been hung or something like that back in those days, he decides. This is based on a poem, by the way. So by Banjo Patterson, Australian poet. He decides that he would rather drown himself in the river than be caught. So there is this kind of death element in the end. But when you sing it, it's like the unofficial Australian national anthem. It's kind of very jaunty, and it doesn't deviate much from its jauntiness. There's actually very little musical development within the tune. So I decided, we have to tell the story in the music, and so that's where you have the Dies Irae, which is like a death, represents the death in that. But then we've set it, to this kind of American bluegrass kind of road trip feel good music vibe. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I love the road trip analogy, because you really can feel that going through the different treatments of that theme. There's something here that I think runs through everything that you do, and you talk about wanting to inject a little bit of the dark side back into that Waltzing Matilda, but you did it in such a kind of a classy way, bringing in medieval death chant into it. And I see you as a really classy young musician. Some folks are out there in blue jeans and T-shirts. According to your Twitter feed, you're an amateur fashionista. Everything about you has a real sense of class to it. Is that something that you're consciously trying to achieve, or is that just who you are?
Well, I think the most important thing is to always be who you are. I mean, you can develop yourself in certain ways, but for me, I love tradition. I think that tradition is so important, because without tradition, you have nothing to base yourself on. I mean, and in classical music, that is something we stand on the shoulders of. I mean, all these giants. Not to mention the players themselves, but also more importantly the composers. So, these great composers who did these amazing works, that is our tradition. So, to some people who think that we've got, so classical music, everyone kind of acknowledges to a certain extent that, how do we keep with the times, first of all, and how do we gain new audiences? And some people, have very different approaches to it. I think that we should be proud of our tradition. So, we dress up, we wear, suits on stage, tuxedos. You don't have to wear tails, but at least something that's, because it's an event. It's our, and I think there's something that we should acknowledge in the respect towards this art that we need to have. So, some people think, it's okay just to wear whatever. And in some circumstances, I think yes, but in the majority, not so much. So I'm always wearing a suit on stage, and it's respect towards the composer, respect also towards the audiences too. And other people say, maybe we should let audiences, go on social media while the concert is happening. They should tweet about the concert. And I think, I'm not so as much social media as I do. I'm not. I think that we have a great art here. We have a great product. and people need to experience it in its originality, original kind of method. And if you are distracted, if there's any distractions, coming from your phone, you're not going to be able to really, it's like if you were on your phone during a movie, you couldn't fully experience and enjoy that, in my opinion. So, there's so many different methods and approaches, but I'm glad you think that that I'm doing okay.
Well, what you're saying, though, coming from somebody who is so present in social media, and you do a lot of videos and you communicate directly on a one-on-one level with your audience, I think it says a lot that you want to keep some integrity in the brand, as it were.
Yeah, I think that it's really important, because as soon as you start cheapening your brand, you will lose people's respect. Mm-hmm. That being said, it's important not to, because I think this is kind of the trouble we got ourselves into in the first place, is that you can't just have an arrogant attitude and simply live in your ivory tower. I think that that's not good either. I think that there is a middle ground, and that's what I've been trying to find. That's ever since I really started performing.
Well, looking at some of the other works on this disc and this tribute, to some of the great violinists, you've got some arrangements of Jascha Heifetz and Kreisler here. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole theme, is these arrangements, but besides the Bruch Violin Concerto, which I chose because, it's a classy, romantic piece. And I thought that, we needed some meat, some main course in the album. But the other stuff that you mentioned, like the Summertime by Heifetz, arranged by Heifetz, or the other stuff by Kreisler, Syncopation, and Schön Rosmarin, they all tell a different story. I think that each of those tracks, and this is what I love about this particular album, is that it's very much a themed album, but each track, I was speaking with the recording producer and engineer and sound engineer, and I said, I want every track to sound different, like its own thing. This Viennese sounding, Schön Rosmarin, I want this one to, sound like it's different from especially the Bruch Violin Concerto, but also even the other salon style violin piano pieces. And that's very hard to achieve. But, so we were moving the mics around. We were doing all sorts of experimentation. And for the first time, I felt like, instead of just, because recording has always kind of been like, okay, hit that button, and I'm going to try and just perform the best I possibly can. And instead of that, and you just try and capture that, instead of that, it was like we were creating something inside the studio, trying to, and I think that's incredibly important. For the first time, we were creating something, because if you're just trying to capture something, it'll never be as good as the original, in my opinion. It's like trying to take a photo of a sunset. But instead, if you're actually adding something within that, then you have something that's new. And so I'm really proud of what we achieved here.
Let's just talk very quickly about the Bruch Violin Concerto. I see the analogy here of it being like the giant sunflower at the center of the bouquet. And the other works that you have on there, you've kind of freshened up a little bit, some of these more traditional works with new arrangements. You can't really do that with Bruch. How are you making it look fresh? How are you making it your own? Or is it just a solid tribute to the past? How do you view it?
Well, you can't help but play the way you and be influenced by your time. So whether that be from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or right now, it is how you've lived. Despite, of course you can study, and that's what we do as classical musicians. We're constantly studying, what the composer was going through at the time of the composition was being composed. And so stuff like that, but in the end, it is how it is. And I feel like the Bruch, in this particular recording, I tried to go against that as much as I could, against that, like, okay, how do you make it sound fresh without, doing stuff just for the sake of doing it to sound new, and how can it still sound old school? It's a little bit like a James Bond film. It's like, you've got tradition. You shouldn't deviate from certain things, but how do you make an old character like that new? So it's exactly like that. Why should we have another? We already know what's going to happen in the James Bond film. He comes out, he's dashing in his tuxedo. There's some sort of casino scene involved. There's pretty beautiful women, and one of them dies tragically, and he has to fight the bad guy. And he will succeed. That's always what happens, right? But yet we love it for all the things that are in between. And I think that's what is what I tried to do here in the Bruch Violin Concerto. All the stuff in between the notes and within the notes that tells a different story.
I think you would make a great James Bond, by the way.
Well, I love tuxedos, so
yeah. The album is called The Golden Age from violinist Ray Chen, his first from Decca Classics. It came out just this past month. More information at raychenviolin.com. Ray, thank you for joining us today here on FM 91.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad. Have a nice day.